Hello and welcome to our second Community Conversations on Race. We have Vince Harper with us again, and he is interviewing Rubin Scott, the president of the Santa Rosa Sonoma County NAACP, and we are so honored to have you with us today, Rubin. All right, you guys, take it away.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Vince Harper. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for Community Action Partnership of Sonoma County. As our wonderful host has said, this is our second edition of Community Conversations on Race. I just want to take a moment to share a portion of our statement on Black Lives Matter movement. So we cannot end the war on poverty until we end racism. In 1964, Community Action Partnership was founded on the belief that all people deserve social and economic equity. It is now 2020, and while some progress has been made, it is simply not enough. It is time to deeply reflect on our biases, ask hard questions, and reevaluate policies that are unfair to the poor and people of color. Our agency fully supports and stands in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. It is time for change. We are recommitting ourselves to our original fight, the fight to end racism. As a part of our commitment to end racism, we are hosting a series of community conversations on race. It is my great honor to introduce Rubin Scott, president of the NAACP Santa Rosa, to give us his perspective on current events. So it's good to have you here, Rubin.
Thank you. And I do want to acknowledge that I heard the opening, and I think that is great that Community Action Partnership is actually taking a stance and stepping forward more to embrace us and their community involvement as far as resources, especially. So that's great to hear.
All right, great, thank you. Let's begin. So first question is, and this was hopefully it's a softball question that we have for you. Mm-hmm. So let's start with a bit about you. So tell us about your background and your experience that brought you to Sonoma County.
The experience that brought me to Sonoma County. I was born in San Francisco. I was raised in Alameda and Oakland. I want to say I was brought to Sonoma County. My family and I would come to Guerneville, Johnson's Beach for summer vacations when I was a child from the Bay Area. We'd drive up. And then there was a situation where my mom was actually incarcerated at one time and she was released to Sonoma County. So then we had to come to live. So that's when I finally took my roots inside of Sonoma County, unfortunately. So that's what brought me.
Okay, thank you. So what experiences made you want to help victims of injustice?
I think as a child, I seen what was going on around me, and I seen how the adults would respond to the inequalities and the lack of resources that us children actually had. And I always said I wanted to make a change. I believe that when I was 21, I had a friend of mine, Malik Saunders, who said, hey, you would be perfect working with at-risk youth, and brought me into the group homes. That's when I started working with like social advocates for youth and a few other organizations in the area. At that time, I started looking at policies and I started looking at how their family structure was. And I started seeing the injustice and inequalities they had as well, growing up in their lives. And I started looking at what kind of opportunities would they have in their future with the cards that they were dealt. And I always wanted to make a change once again. So throughout portions of my life, I've always seen reasons for trying to make change. And I never really understood what that really looked like or how to do that, I must say. And so I started going to school. After my mom passed away, I found myself broken in a way, emotionally and mentally. And so I didn't want to be like the majority of the people that dealt with grief, especially from a close loved one. So I went back to school and I started focusing on human development, family studies. I went to Penn State. And in that, I started understanding myself, not only myself, but my community, structures, policies. And in that, I think is where I started seeing I wanted to introduce change. And so I started creating adolescent development books. I published about 4 or 5 books. I created adolescent development workshops in my community. I felt that we as individuals need to focus on our children and inside home first. once we get a solid understanding of our own morals, values, ethics, and just that family unit and structure, then we can move outside of that and we can develop in a more, how you say, in a better fashion. And so I think those are some of the things that kind of help drive me to where I'm at now.
Great, thank you. So just to get in a little bit deeper, can you share your thoughts about the murder of George Floyd?
The thought about the murder is something that we have seen all our lives, majority of us, people of color, especially Black men growing up. We have to warn our children about it. And so this has became a conversation piece that we have had in our homes far too often. I believe that during this time, we actually seen what we teach our kids to do, regardless of social perception. We teach our children to be compassionate, empathetic, comply. And we've seen that. And in the end, we've seen him call for his mother, and you've seen what happened as a result of that. And so with that, I believe that it was another, to me, nail in the fence to us or for us. It kind of reminded us and drove home the point that we were not considered as human, that we are still considered as 3/5 as people. And within that, that's when we realized that policies and procedures needed to change drastically. And there was no more time to ask, it was mandatory.
So in the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd, it feels like the whole country exploded with protests and anger. And we saw a lot in the media daily in terms of what's happening. And then it actually occurred here and still is occurring with protests daily and every weekend and those kinds of things. So some people have asked, why now? So after everything, why now? Can you tell us why you think all this is happening now?
I think there's a few reasons why now, right? You're dealing with the demographic of 18 to 24-year-old youth that they feel like their community, governing parties have lied to them all their lives. They went from being secure and comfortable where they couldn't be whooped and spanked, but they were being coddled, and then all of a sudden they're homeless. So we have an 18 to 24 homeless demographic. So we look at that, and then we have to look at we had a lot of people who were looking at their own implicit bias as far as white people in our community. About 3 or 4 years ago, they started having discussions in groups to deal with their own individual perceptions of different races and religions and why. Family structures and how it was built and implemented, and how that may have implemented and infused a racist or supremacist type of culture that was suppressing others. So I think they started doing, a lot of white people started doing their own homework. And so when they had an opportunity to make a change, a valid change, they took that. So I think that you have a lot of people that are white that are stepping up now and saying, we have learned, we have educated our own selves, and this is the change that we want to see and the legacy that we want to leave to our children and in our community and society. So I believe that mixed with, it's a women's movement. When the women heard that man cry out for his mom, and he complied, didn't struggle, he complied and still lost his life. Every mother who taught their child right, how to be a human, right, the correct way, felt that. So every mother, I think the women are the majority now on the planet. So now you see a women movement like you've never seen before that saved their children, because it hasn't been done. The women's voice now is stronger than it ever has been. So I think it's multi-layered. I think there's a lot of different reasons why we kind of see people up in arms and responding and reacting the way they are.
Great, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about our community specifically. So how our community, and specifically the Black community in Sonoma County, has reacted to the Black Lives Matter movement. What do you see?
I believe that the Black people in our community, they've responded in a lot of different ways. They've been upset, they're angered, frustrated, but they're also mobilizing in a way that we've never seen before. So we're coming together, and we're coming together, and we're trying to organize and work together for a benefit of all humans and mankind inside of Sonoma County. I see conversations that never took place before. I see dialogue. I see faith in relationships. I see community building together. So I see a lot of positives that have came from this situation. And I see a lot of positive that's going to happen in the future from this because of this situation. So in the Black community, I see a lot of promise. I see a lot of hope. But it's coming from our young people. So I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it come. I hear the despair in the elder generation, but if they can hold on, then they can see that we are actually making change day by day. Unlike any other time in life, we're seeing change coming in policies and legislation. So it's a different time. We're seeing a movement come from the young people whose voices were shut out of society. And I'm excited. So.
Okay, perfect. So talking about that, this new movement, so do you feel that the new movement will make progress on the issue of racial equity? And then the second part of that is, how do we keep the momentum going? Because we've seen in the past where, there's been an incident that occurred and there's people, coming to the streets, albeit this is much, much bigger as of late. But how do we keep that momentum going and not get lost on and unfocused on things that don't matter as much?
Okay, so what I heard you ask me a question on equity, about equity, and then how do we keep momentum going?
Yes.
The only way that we can build equity is when we start getting funds allocated, resources and property to the Black community, and is going towards the individuals in a Black community that are actually doing the building and development. So the only way we can see equity is if we land up getting property, such as a rec center, or we have mental health facilities that help target people of color. You deal with different social and cultural traumas in society. So we need things that are going to be able to be therapeutic for the African diaspora in general. And 9 times out of 10, that comes with a financial equity portion, because we need property. We need to be able to house our 18 to 24-year-olds who are going through this delicate transitional period. And we have to have, so when it comes to equity, we have to have a commission that will allow us to go ahead and come together, at least 7 individuals, so we can allocate funds that if we can get from the city in an equity trust to build our community. With that being said, how do we keep the momentum going with the young people? I believe that if we create a platform in which we have constant dialogue and we're help developing them as organizations, allow their voices to be heard, but create a positive platform in which we can see that voice is going to that targeted audience, such as the mayor, and that he's able to listen, then I think that we can continue to keep a positive movement, and we can have a way of building our community, especially our youth, in a positive direction, right? And so I believe it's time for us as professional leaders to come together and start mentoring these young individuals that we're seeing throughout the community right now that are popping up. Start mentoring them, start having them be your allies, start bringing them into our organizations, and start being a part of them, because these are our next leaders in society. Their structure may be a little different, but we have to be able to work with that structure and help them underline that, define that, so that way they can grow and blossom. So I believe the momentum will continue. We just have to be the voice that helps them guide it in the correct direction in which it can be used the right way.
Thank you. So let's switch a little bit over to the NAACP. And, they are, I was really touched by their We Are Dying campaign, basically. So that hashtag and that story. So can you tell us a little bit more about the We Are Dying campaign?
So We Are Done Dying.
We Are Done Dying.
Yeah, We Are Done Dying. It's pretty much the NAACP has been here since 1909. We have fought civil injustices and inequalities. We are done. We are done standing around allowing our youth, our future, just to be killed and exterminated off this planet. So with the We Are Done Dying movement, we're trying to push everyone to stand up with us in solidarity as allies and fight back. And we're not trying to say fight back in a not productive way. If you go to naacp.org, we have petitions. We have ways that you can sign up with us, and you can help us write resolutions that we can lobby to Congress to get bills and policies passed. So when we say we are done dying, we are now taking the power back from the elected officials in our community, building our own community up and giving them demands to say, this is what we need, this is what we want. So in that way we can help build up the correct way. So when we say we are done dying, it just means that we are now going to take power into our own hands and we're going to push forward and develop at all costs, as Reverend Turner would say at Community Baptist.
So it offers kind of a diversity of things that people can do. And if they go to the website, they can learn more about that. Great.
Correct. If you would like to go and see any of our initiatives, anything that any of our petitions, any old town halls that we may have had on a national level, you can go to the NAACP.org and they have all that. If you want to sign up as a member, you can go to the NAACP.org and we're Unit Branch 1074. And you can go ahead and just put your information in Santa Rosa, Sonoma County. So yes, that hosts majority of our information. If you have any questions in regards to any kind of field research or anything, it's all right there. All the information is right there.
So any particular of these initiatives, right? So you're on board with the We Are Done Dying campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any other initiatives that you would like to speak of about that the NAACP and particularly the local branch is interested in having us hear about?
At the local branch right now, I must admit that before the COVID happened, we were very active. We were focused on making sure that we fed families during the holiday season, and then we're looking at voter registration and to mobilize that. We'll do with the COVID right now coming out of it. Within the next few weeks, we will be having a community discussion with men of color, which should be held tomorrow. We have our first town hall where we want everyone to come out so we can hear their frustrations, anxieties, and we plan to have a few therapists on hand so we can kind of deal with some of that. We have a march with the mayor on July 6th at 4:30. July 2nd at 4:30 from City Hall to Courthouse Square with the mayor and chief of police of Santa Rosa, and racism and police brutality march with the NAACP. Join us, come out. Right now we're looking at, of course, the census. We're pushing the census, as you know, and make sure you register to vote. We're looking at the ballot in November. We're looking at all the policies and we're looking at the initiatives and we're looking at who we should vote in and who we should vote out. So within the next few months, we'll have our information in regards to who we like in the area, who we support, kind of a letter of support. There's a lot of things. I mean, we're so active that I feel like I'm going to leave a few things out. Yeah, to get back, I believe we're going to start a mobilization campaign in order for the elections and the vote. And we plan on, that's our biggest thing. So we plan on doing that within the next week or so, trying to get everybody acclimated and back into that routine and looking at November. That's one of the biggest things. Of course, we have been checking in with our seniors, making sure that their anxiety levels are down, making sure that they're comfortable, making sure they have their resources. We're actually checking in with our 24 and under. A lot of our 24 and under demographic, make sure that they're being responsible during this time. If they're protesting, making sure that they're quarantining themselves, making sure that they're staying up to date on their regular routines. Because when this COVID is over, we want to make sure that our young professionals go back into the workplace and they have that advantage. We don't want them sitting stagnant, not learning, not being productive during this time. So we need them to be active during this time, and whatever it is that they love to do, their passions, their education, we need them to continue that, because we need those professionals when this is all over. We don't know how long it will take, but we need them to stay active and stay continuing their own self-improvement and growth throughout this process. One big initiative that I'm trying to push in my community is that we're looking at each other right now, and it's a serious time, right? But I don't want you to start that self-hate within yourself. I don't want you to start building up these implicit bias or these little these little undergrown bias towards each other or towards yourself. I don't want you looking at your race and religion and thinking something is wrong with you. We are all made this way through God. We all have a right to be who we are. The only problem and the only right we don't have is when you oppress someone else. So I don't want to hear people saying of all colors, shapes, and creeds what it is that they did to hurt somebody else and teach their children self-hate or looking at their own skin color or skin tone or historical representation of who they are and think negative of themselves. I don't want people in today's society building up this self-hate. I don't want them doing what has been done to us. So, two things I need to say.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have quite a few people on this Zoom with us, listening, and they're very interested. And I think since ever since this explosion happened in terms of people going out and protesting, there have been people out there who are wondering, what can I do? So how can people get involved with NAACP's efforts to bring about positive change in our community?
A few things you can do is you can contact me locally here, 707-843-2125. We have committees. You can come join a committee, and in those committees, we have a resolution committee. We have a, political campaign committee. We have a youth and college committee. We have an education committee. We have a veterans committee. We have community coordination. We have so many committees. We would love for you to come and be involved. If you're looking for change, we have manuals and we have pinpoint directions on how to implement that change that you want to see. So if you have that burning passion or your education is pushing you towards something, come. So that way we can help build our community together. I would love to show you and help train you and help give you everything you need so that way you can go ahead and be brilliant and thrive in today's society. Whether you're become a chairman or whether you become an elected officer, just come be a part of us and let's try to work together. Another way you can go ahead and contact me, send me an email, rubinjscott@gmail.com, or we meet at the Prayer Chapel, which is in Santa Rosa, 1295 South Wright Road, the first Monday of each month at 6:30. So you can come to a meeting, or you can contact me, send me an email. I can add you into our Zooms, and then we can have a Zoom meeting even so. So if you want to be a part of something, we have many committees. Like I said, you can go to naacp.org. You can take a look at the different committees through the bylaws, see what you want to be a part of. It has the purpose. It has the outline of what the committees do. And so we can work from there.
Can you mention your phone number once again, where they can call?
My telephone number is 707-843-2125. That's the best number to contact us at this time. We're in the process of changing over some information, mailing address, telephone number to our main office, just so we have better access and visibility in the community.
Okay, and then you spoke about a protest, a march that's coming up. Can you give that information again? I think you said July 2nd?
Correct. July 2nd at 4:30, we're going to march from City Hall to Courthouse Square with the Mayor, Tom, of course. Sorry, I can't pronounce his last name. That's the
Sweathelm.
Sweathelm. So Tom Sweathelm and Ray Navarro, the Chief of Police, Ray Navarro. We're gonna walk from City Hall to Courthouse Square. Courthouse Square, we're gonna go ahead and have some speakers and then hear them speak briefly, and then hopefully we'll be able to end racism. So that's the ideology. We can come together, we can communicate what's going on, our anxieties, our stress, our fears, and we can put an end to some of this. We need to be on the same page. We need to have a creed that we're all one, and a constitution that's for all of us, that we all agree to and we all sign. So we're hoping that day, the March, July 2nd, 4:30 with Tom Sweathelm and Ray Navarro will help us start to get on that same page, and will be that vessel we need to move forward together.
So how, this is new to me. I didn't realize that you guys had worked together to come up with this march. So can you talk about how that happened?
I believe we looked at everything that was going on in society. I've been involved in marches in San Francisco and Oakland and Vallejo. And when everything started coming out, it was like, we need to have something in solidarity. Tom was already on the same page as us. Ray Navarro was already on the same page as us. We meet once a month, and in our meetings, you can see that you could physically see that they're invested, that they understand, and they want change. Within that, we continued dialogue, and it never faded away. We thought over this time the communication would fade away, and as things kind of continued to build, I told Tom Schwedhelm that I want to do a march with the NAACP and him, and our community needs them to speak and say something and address what's going on. And he said, I feel the same way, and I've been waiting, let's do it. And so, you know, we picked the day, it's July 2nd. We started looking at the different days, and we had so much stuff going on that we wanted to be mindful of everyone. And so we decided July 2nd would be a great day at 4:30, we would start. Yeah, so it became down to a situation where we felt we need to all be on the same page. And there would be nothing more like it than having us all walk together in solidarity. And his idea was from City Hall to Courthouse Square. That sounds great. And so, like I said, we worked together in building this and creating it. And yeah, I'm excited about it.
Okay. So, so what are the next steps? And I think you talked a lot about next steps for the NAACP. Anything you want to add to that? But also personally, for you, what are the next steps for you in terms of this movement and this current wave that's happening?
The next steps for me, I believe, is to make sure that we as a community are working together in a more cohesive unit. I believe that the communication needs to continue to develop, not only between us and elected officials, but also us between the organizations. When I say us, I mean the community, members, leaders such as myself, and NAACP as well. But I think as it's important for us as individuals in our community to start taking more of an initiative, to step up and be active, not just speak on it, not just critique someone for doing something, but actually step up and be more active. So what I want to do is I want to help create, build, and develop our next leaders, whether it's our next senators, congressmen, district attorneys. I want to go ahead and take our young generation and put them on a platform in which they are in complete control of their own life, and have the equity to do it. So with the NAACP, I hope that we're able to create momentum for our community so that way they can have everlasting equality and power, just within their own community, I believe. When I say power, I don't mean defund the police, 0%. It's not what I mean. I mean, when you have equality and you have power, that means that you don't have to worry about your babies being targeted and pulled over. You don't have to worry about police brutality. You don't have to worry about applying for a job and not having a job or not receiving a job. You don't have to worry about being on child support and worrying about your license being taken away, your bank accounts being seized. You're able to live free. You're able to live free, you know? And so that's what I mean by giving them power back.
Okay, perfect. And so, I don't know, do we have any questions from the audience at this point? You know, we have someone looking at those for us. But while we wait, let's see, wait for those questions. Let's see. So how do we hold police and government accountable on kind of on a national level and then also on kind of our local level? So I know about your work working with the mayor and the chief of police, but are there any additional ways that we should be looking at to hold them accountable, police accountable in particular, just because of where this has stemmed from and this ongoing historical experience that we've had, and then also government?
Well, I think it's important to look at your policies and procedures, your local governing policies and procedures, and start there. You know, when we look at the sheriffs and police unions, we look at the sheriffs and the police, we got to look at the unions. So know where your frustration needs to be targeted at, so you're not spinning your wheels, right? So if you're going to try to make change, know if it needs to be on a local level or on a state level. If it's on a local level, then there's a certain way you got to go about that. On a state level, certain ways you got to go about that. So just know what your target is that you're trying to hit. I think that's important. I think that's why we like to create resolutions. Write a resolution, and we submitted state, national, and we try to go ahead and lobby it for legislation, policies, laws. You know, I think it's important for people to know how laws are created. Google it. You know, I think it's important to know your local laws and initiatives, especially when it comes to policing. Know what they got in trouble with before. Know what they're being held accountable for at this moment in time. Know what the bad grades stand for. And then you can always work from that. If you know their policy procedure handbook and you know what they're being held accountable on, then you know how to kind of move and navigate, and you can see the problems and flaws in that. It's really simple. But know what you're targeting. If it's the police, you can't go to, it's a union. So you got to lobby initiatives for that. So like I said, there's a lot of things that we want change in, and we just have to know how to go about that change, especially in our local or state area.
Great. So can you talk about other groups in Sonoma County that you are partnering with, or you're working with to in this effort?
You know, the League of Women's Voters, I want to say there's a huge allies of us. The Women's March, Leslie Greaves, you know, huge allies of us. Juneteenth, I'm on the Juneteenth committee, of course. Martin Luther Day committee, Martin Luther King Jr. Birthday committee, that's what it is. 100 Black Men in Sonoma County, they're doing great work at this time. Community Baptist, CBC, Fence Up Top, Honor Jackson, he's doing a great job. Balls Out, they're an organization that is phenomenal as well. That's Ken Duncan. He's from Santa Rosa, but is also in Sacramento. Let me see. I've always tried to just stay involved. I have my own Change of Heart organization. It's to these two ladies who've created an organization to help women in the community deal with trauma and deal with anxiety, social anxieties and fears. Man, you know, I feel like I'm leaving a few out. Of course, there's always the Black Forum that's doing great work. You have Jacqueline Lawrence, her Harris production is doing great work. You have Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow, they're doing great work. And then you have individuals in the community that's actually doing great work, like Michael Hale, he's a professor over there at Santa Rosa Junior College. I take my hat off to Santa Rosa Junior College. The BSU over there went ahead and handed them their demands, and they took it seriously. They're creating and building an ethnic studies program over there. Before we try to get it mandated, they took the initiative to meet and see what they can do to construct one through the requests and demands of their own students. So I gotta praise Santa Rosa Junior College at this time. Andre Bailey, Chops, Lorez Bailey. You know, there's a few organizations in the community that we have continued to work with. The city of Santa Rosa. I mean, I can go on and on, naming the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, from Amber Hickey to Danielle Marchbanks. I mean, I can go on and on with all the organizations that I work with. I mean, work with on a daily. I must actually praise all the mayors from the different cities and the chiefs of police from different cities. We've been on communication, and a lot of the mayors have been stepping up, trying to handle their business and do what they need to do to provide resources to not just the 18 to 24 demographic, but also to our seniors. So I must praise them right now because they're looking at the spectrum and what we need in our community. So I got to give them that. I'm going to say that's that. I can.
Okay. And I have a question from the chat. Have you met with your legislatures? So I'm guessing
like Dodds.
Yeah, Dodds.
Yes.
And
Thompson. With the NAACP, we do lobby day in every May. So every May we go up to the Capitol. If you follow my Facebook, you will see me in the Capitol with students walking through, and we lobby different legislative bills, and we try to get things passed. Last year was the Crown Act. This year, due to COVID, we didn't have that same platform that we normally have, and so that kind of hurt. But yeah.
Okay. And speaking of COVID, what is the impact of COVID on the African American community here? I know it's been devastating across the country. So what's your assessment of what's happening here in Sonoma County or local Bay Area for African Americans?
Here locally, I believe we've lost a few people of color that I've heard of inside our community. I think the biggest impact has been emotionally, mentally, physically. The stress and anxiety that it has caused for our seniors during this time, not being able to leave the home, and when you leave the home, you know they're such at this this so hyped up state that it's causing them to become sick and ill, or lack of intimacy, affection, companionship. So we have to look at this COVID during this time of COVID has really been difficult on our community of color because majority of us take care of our seniors and our elder population because 70% of our population is the baby boomers, which is the senior population, the elders. So majority of us are staying home, taking care of them at this time. So we have to be more mindful of going out, how we're going out, activities that we are spending, socialization, and then just the fear, because there was a point in time where statistics showed that African Americans were getting at a higher rate than majority of the population. Then it switched over to Hispanics. So we live in a fear of COVID. So we have to be very mindful, like I said, of our own personal health and as well as our seniors in the community.
Mm-hmm. So as the economy opens up and more things are now open, there's people able to go out. Is that helping to ease some of those fears and that tension?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I think it's creating more anxiety and more fears for some seniors because once this has been implemented, right, for your own safety protocols and the fear is real. Respiratory system illness, they're going to pass away. We've already dealing with them being elderly, so opening up doesn't ease anything any better. It actually makes us more apprehensive because if you open things up, more people are coming into contact with each other, and then we're able to spread it more rapidly. And like I said, this is a very scary time for our population because we don't want to be wiped out by a virus that we have no background information on. If you looked at like the Tuskegee experiments, and there was a lot of times me growing up in Oakland projects when I was a kid, organizations would come through and offer money to experiment for experiments like marijuana research, children smoking weed. They would offer, people would come through and offer. So we have to be mindful that we're not being experiments to something once again in society, but that we're actually taking the precautions to make sure that we're keeping ourselves alive during this pandemic. So.
Okay. And then I know that I've known you for a number of years, and I've always seen you in the community doing. And so I think I often think of you as probably one of the hardest working advocates out there that I've seen. And so I think I saw a picture of you at the Recreation and Parks. So just and I'm a firm believer in civic engagement and getting people involved in the community. So if you could do a short little tell us a little story about how did you get so engaged in community. I know we touched on it a little bit, but what really makes you want to get out there and serve? So I know you plant trees, you help with some of the cleanups we've been at. So I just want to, and that's not the
all right, you're asking me a sensitive
I
question.
want it to be normal, but tell me what motivates you and why should we get more involved in our community?
So I was always involved in my community, but before my mom died, she told me that I was too violent for her and that she always didn't want that. And it bothered me because I always felt like I was a product of my environment. And after she died, I found myself just not responding the same. But the only thing that made me feel good was creating books and giving back to my community. And I would be depressed and I would be grieving. But the only thing that made me feel somewhat normal and that she would be happy about was for me to do community work. I wanted to be inside, but although I wanted to be inside, like it seemed as if my community somehow wanted me to be outside. So one time I didn't even feel accepted in my own community when I was going through like my the death of my mom. So I stayed outside because I was going through my own stuff, and I started getting more love and appreciation for being outside and working with people outside. And then I remember a tale about the Bible about Jesus worked with everybody, the lowest. And so I found myself wanting to walk through neighborhoods and just want to work with anybody who was willing to stand next to me. And so I found that there was more people in my community like me who was going through grief and anxiety and depression and hurt and was broken. And together we were able to work together and build each other up and be there for each other in ways other than just communicating. We were at each other's side, and we were there every time we needed to be there. And so my passion came from trying to get myself back. After you lose a mom or lose a loved one, it's difficult, right? So after going through that, the only thing that made me feel as if my mom was happy was when I helped my community, when I built and I developed. And then I realized that I'm going to go one day. I'll be gone one day, right? So when I go, I want to go to where my mom is at, and I want to be in heaven. That's where I want to go. And there's only way you can do that is one way. So in that way, I have my own creed, my own accord that I have to live by. And so I have to, I would say you're the hardest working man in show business, but I got to make sure that my heart is pure. I have no evil intentions, and I'm not taking nothing from nobody. And within that, I know that I can be myself. There will be a time in this life where I'm no longer here. And when that comes, then I will know when I stand in front of my God that I would have did everything in my power to be right. And that's why I do it. The only reason.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I know I kind of went off script there, but I wanted to make sure that I ask about that.
Yeah.
You know, and I really.
You said you would get me. You didn't warn me. You warned me. So you got me on that one.
Hopefully it wasn't too bad. I
was okay.
I really appreciate you going deep on that one. Because I'm a firm believer, as you know, in that, particularly for kids, to get them involved in doing service, and that there's so many wins with that in terms of what they learn and learning to work with the diversity of people and etc. But enough
and
about
who you meet, correct, and who you meet. You know, being out there working with different people, you meet different intellects, you meet different genders, you meet different shapes. Like my mind was closed. I was straight, heterosexual, black male with children that was just tuned in. And by working with my community, I understood the LGBTQ. I understood I understood so much about different races, ethnicities, people, religions, spiritualities that I couldn't have learned being inside. And so I want to challenge people, get out of your own stinking thinking and get outside into life and just learn people, talk to them, communicate. I guarantee you'll end up loving them like I do. And like you do, Vince. You know, that's the biggest thing. You know, we're out there and we love people because there's something genuine and authentic when you actually get out there to the community and you do the work rather than to sit down and sit at home and watch TV. So
great. Just gonna look at here. So yeah, I like, again, I really appreciate your time. Any as we kind of get to the end of our interview, any other like important thoughts that you or things that you want to leave us with? You know, it could be just life. It could be specifically, you know, what I think what people are most thinking about is how do we support this change? You know, so it could be about that. So anything you want to, messages you want to leave with us?
I want to say, let's not look at the negative and let's look at what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a group of people who's trying to fight for equality. I want to say it again. We're dealing with a group of people who are fighting for equality. We haven't been equal, and so they're fighting to be equal. I think the real reason why we're upset is because we thought we were. We thought we were all together in this. We thought that you loved us as a society and we loved you. So our heart broke when we realized that our society wasn't with us. And so you're seeing hurt and you're seeing pain. I don't want you to take it as seeing a Black or seeing a negative, broken home. No, we're just dealing with individuals who are saying we want equality. So I think if we go forward, it's hard when people ask us, what do you guys want, right? You got to say equality, and then you have to break it down to what equality looks like. So my challenge to everyone is to go ahead and break down what equality looks like, and then explain it to someone. The frustration in that alone is difficult. But as a people, we have to learn how we can channel our frustration and anger the correct way, how we can put it down to where it's a demand letter. It's not seen as a terrorist threat. It's seen as, this is my positioning. This is what I want to see change. And this is how you can go about it. We need us to move more in a cohesive, in a more militarized, even though we don't like that word, or educated, or more together type of fashion. So that way we can achieve this equality that we're looking for. So let's come together as a community, as a people, as a whole, and let's build that equality that we all need. Like I said, I know it's difficult because we've been colonized, but we must come together and make these policies inclusive for all of us. Not just people of color, not just Black people, but everybody. I do want people to remember that when we normally talk about Black Lives Matter, we're also talking about the Asians, Hispanics, and the 70% of white people with the lower social economic background. So when I say I'm the NAACP, that's the reason why we get so much support, because I have to look after so many different ethnic groups, social backgrounds, and make sure that they're all included in this fight for Black Lives Matter as well. So when we bring up one person, we all come up. So that's why I want to say, don't be upset at us right now for trying to push laws and legislation to pass, because all we're trying to get is equality.
All right, thank you. Thank you. That was well said, and really appreciate that. So as we kind of move to our final minutes of our conversation, I just want to say, really thank you very much for coming on and sharing of yourself, and letting me throw you a little curveball there, and
Okay.
bring out. I love that's that moment when you told that story, or those stories about why you do what you do.
Right.
So I really appreciate that, and thank you. So we're running out of time, so I just want to say that we're continuing this series. So next week we'll be have the Santa Rosa Police Chief Navarro and actually youth from our Youth Civic Engagement Project asking questions. So they had an opportunity to meet with him a couple weeks ago, and so they came up with some really great questions. And I think thinking about something that you said, having knowing where to and who to ask the right questions to. So and I was blown away. And actually, he said at the beginning of our conversation, he said, you guys are asking better questions than some of the adults, have asked me. So I think so it's going to be a great opportunity. And so hopefully it segues off of what we've talked about, and a lot of what they're looking at is some of the everything from kind of police procedure policy related to riots and using rubber bullets and your tear gas, just to give you a little teaser, but also to say, that they certainly have their issues. And one of the kids said to me, should I be mean about this? And I said, what do you mean by mean? And all she meant was that she wanted to ask some tough questions. And I said, you go ahead, ask those tough questions. And I think you're right, that the kids today who are out there on the streets or at home and are really feeling this movement really want to
Correct.
they really want to do something and they really want to ask
Yes.
those tough questions. So
Yes.
I think it's a
You
good
know,
follow-up to what we talked about.
and when we sat down and with Chief Navarro and the mayor, Tom Swinham, they were open to the questions. They, like I said, our community didn't shy down from their thoughts. Our young people, we have a young lady who's, I think, 21, 22. She didn't shy away from her questioning. And so it's important that they're able to have that platform, but it has to be in a constructive way. You know, we have to let them know, okay, you know, what are your questions? Write it down, you know, limit it to a few. You don't want to just keep it, you know, we have to have that, as you know, that a professional structure. So that way, when they're sitting in a meeting with them, they can understand it is professional. You know, it's not something that's just, but with that being said, our youth are so brilliant and they have the mind right now that's leading us that it's phenomenal. They're the ones that are saying there's more money going into war, the military, the schools. Why do I want to go to school? I'd rather go to a vocational place, learn a trade, and make my money. We were always pushed into school. They're learning, nah, there's another way around this. They're able to Google and use YouTube to find information that took us years to study. They're learning in 15, 20 minutes. So when we look at their intellect is far beyond what we could actually predict it to be, right? But we don't give them credit enough because all we do is we see them sitting down. Talk to these children. They say watch more movies on TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat about what's going on in society. They have seen more of what's going on than we have. They're logging it in their brains, 13, 14, 15 years old. Talk to them. Talk to them. Believe me, get what's out of them. When you hear what's coming out of them, then you know how we should move in a society. You should know how we need to move in our governing bodies and systems. Talk to them because they'll tell you where they want to go, what they need, what works for them. Because sometimes our governing systems and our policies are outdated. They're not going in the same direction as the culture shift in America. And so we have to make sure that these things are aligned. So we got to talk to those young people. We got to listen to them. But we, like I said, we also got to make sure that they have that constructive way of communicating that can be heard.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that's a good way to end it. And I certainly concur with all of what you said. So thank you again for being here. And to our audience, we'll see you next week. We'll have a good program, and hopefully everybody tunes in and continues these conversations. So thank you, Rubin. I think we're going to stay a little bit once the broadcast is over. We'll stay a little bit after.
Thank you for having me.
Quick conversation. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. So we will try and keep straight faces and until we are off live. We are exactly at 6:30.